Well, thank you very much for coming, and for everybody who's watching this out there in this whole universe, which we're a part of. Do I have to lean into it? Okay, I thanked everyone for coming. And I also want to thank John for doing this and for inviting me to be a part of it. It's very important that we do extend ourselves in this way. Not me necessarily, I have an easy job here, but John, to have organized this thing, I'm deeply grateful. It's an incredible experience for everyone, I think. So I did do a talk before, as Harrison told you, called From Chemtrails to Pseudo-Life, The Dark Agenda of Synthetic Biology. That talk was about synthetic biology. This talk is about radiation biology. I'm dedicating this once again to Harriet Fels. Some of you knew her. She's no longer alive. She was my mentor and continues to be in terms of how she trained me to think. And I hope that this talk that I give will help you to see in the way that she helped me to see. I don't know if you were ever swung as children by an adult where they would grab you by the arms and they would just do this around and around and around.
Question?
Yes?
Can you move the mic closer to you? You're turning the amplifier up there. You're not loud enough.
Okay. Should I wait till somebody does something? All right. I'll just stay right here. Okay. Anyway, the journey you're going to go on today is going to be much like being swung by your arms, and I hope that it comes full circle. It is going to be a little bit graphic after the midpoint, and I will tell you when that is. So I seriously urge people who don't have a strong stomach to leave at that point and then perhaps watch it online where you can turn it off if you feel like it. All right, so this is dedicated to people who are here to learn and see in the way that I hope you will learn and see at the end of this conference. How many of you value nature in that you go out of your way to connect with the earth, the sky, the water somewhere? So you can raise your hands. And how many do this more than once a month? And how many do this once a week? And how many do it daily? It's very hard for me to see those hands, but okay. Oh, God. There. All right, so now I know where to point. The Earth is surrounded by a low-frequency magnetic field, a resonant cavity of electromagnetic waves, mostly in the 7 to 10 hertz range. These are known as the Schumann resonances. It was a German atmospheric scientist by the same name who discovered that lightning, which occurs anywhere from 50 to 200 times a second all over the planet, lightning creates electromagnetic standing waves around the planet. The ionosphere is a layer of charged particles that protects us from solar activity. It can bend with the electromagnetic waves of the natural world or from those of the sun. As the ionosphere flexes with these rhythms, the Schumann resonances vary from 1 to 40 hertz. You could call these the Earth's brain waves. The human brain is a 7 hertz system. Natural forms have evolved to exist and to thrive in these low frequencies. We know about HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, the military facility in Alaska that pumps millions of watts of power at the ionosphere for its so-called experiments. Bending the ionosphere changes the Schumann frequencies. Radically changing the frequencies in the Earth's resonant cavity and pushing on the ionosphere, as HAARP does, will strongly affect things that happen on the Earth, such as the weather. But I'm not here to talk about manipulation of the weather. Instead, I will talk about what radiation is, what frequencies are, and what they do. They have become part of our language, from FM, AM radio station IDs to descriptors for the wireless world exploding around us today. It all began with the invention of the X-ray by a German physics professor. Fascinated by the behavior of cathode rays, Wilhelm Röntgen discovered that when he placed his hand between a charged cathode tube and a barium-coated screen, an image appeared of the bones of his hand, shadowed by the flesh. This is the famous picture of his wife's hand, the circular object a ring, after 15 minutes of exposure. With the arrival of Röntgen rays, physicians, scientists, and electricians went crazy. X-ray devices became the rage, with treatments given for everything from colds to headaches. Radiation was deemed wondrous and healthful, like a visit to a spa. In 1903, Marie and Pierre Curie received a Nobel Prize for their studies of radioactive minerals, radium, barium, thorium, uranium. They were the world's first explorers of natural radioactivity. Their daughter Irene, together with her husband Frederick Joliot, won the Nobel Prize in 1935 for creating artificial radioactivity, ways to make radioactive materials in the laboratory, maybe in the library too, cheaply and quickly, indispensable to the new field of radiation medicine. Radiation, a barrier breaker in the truest sense of the concept, drew the interest of the country's most powerful people. In 1907, Andrew Carnegie funded the Curie Lab for full-time research. 1913 saw the founding of the National Radium Institute. 1916, the American Radium Society. 1918, publication of the Army X-ray Manual. 1919, Radium Institute in Paris with 2 labs, the Curie Lab and the Pasteur Lab. Laboratory scientists studied the effects of radiation on bacteria, on mice, on dogs, on human tissues and brains. By the 1930s, serious radiation effects on human health were also being studied. Injuries, cancers, deaths of radiation researchers and subjects had not gone unnoticed, yet the growth of this industry went on. The Manhattan Project combined atomic bomb development with medical research. Overt and covert human studies were conducted. Colonel Stafford Warren, who invented the mammogram, served as the project medical chief, witnessing the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, everybody knew what radiation did and what it was at that time. Appalled by the effects of radioactivity, he wrote, and this is a quote, "The deadly range of radioactive products from the atomic bomb has been clearly demonstrated under controlled conditions. The only defense against atomic bombs still lies outside the scope of science. It is the prevention of atomic war." And yet the parade went on. Atomic energy was replaced by nuclear energy, a difference in terms only, for both are about splitting the nucleus of the atom, which releases great power. Nuclear tests were conducted worldwide in the 1950s and 60s. The stories of children playing in the dust, the fallout, are legendary and true, with major consequences. We have grown up in an age of radiation. Many of the health problems we see today, from cancer to autoimmune dysfunction to the slow creeping paralysis of ALS and multiple sclerosis, are the effects of radiation. Ionizing radiation, as X-rays and nuclear radiation are called, is known to heat human tissue. Another word for this is cook. Cooking tissue, destroying it quickly, drastically. For the past few decades, we have been told that non-ionizing radiation in the radio frequency microwave range does not heat or cook human tissue, that it is harmless, that cell phones and wireless technology employ a form of frequency transmission that does not hurt living creatures because the power density is so low. Ionizing means gaining or losing an electron. We are told that radio waves, because their energy is not enough to shake loose electrons, are perfectly safe. So here's how we describe waves. Wavelength is the distance between the crests of a wave. Amplitude could be described as the height of the wave. Frequency is the number of crests per second. Low-frequency waves, like those in the Schumann resonances, have very long wavelengths. Now think about this. A 30 hertz wave, the Schumann resonances are 1 to 40 hertz, has a 10,000 kilometer wavelength. Whereas a 300 gigahertz wave, which is 300 billion hertz, has a 1 millimeter wavelength. And the 3 gigahertz wave, like that of many household cordless phones, has a 10 centimeter wavelength. That's 3 billion cycles per second. The point is that frequencies are not just squiggles on a chart or a piece of paper. They are three-dimensional waves in spiral form. I want you to look at this. This is a mini Slinky I got many years ago. So this is a wave. It's a three-dimensional shaft of energy. It's a cylinder traveling at the speed of light. High-frequency waves oscillate, as I already said, in the billions. In the 900 megahertz wave, which is an old-fashioned cell phone, is 900 million cycles per second. So this wave energy is a force. Frequencies are forces, and these forces have been shown to agitate living cells, given that they oscillate in a range that is so foreign to what life on this planet is used to. James Clerk Maxwell was the real pioneer in electromagnetism. Heinrich Hertz was only trying to prove Maxwell's theories, yet Hertz is the name we relate to EM waves, not Maxwell. Maxwell showed us that electric and magnetic fields travel through space in the form of waves at the speed of light. In fact, light is just a wavelength we see traveling at the speed of other electromagnetic waves. Lightning is light striking with great power, 1 billion volts, so much that it has carved out a resonant cavity in the atmosphere around us. Now, I cannot say enough about our habituation to the Schumann frequencies, the long, languid wavelengths of the natural world. Think about the cell phone you hold to your head. Your head, 7 hertz system, and the phone is putting out 1 billion hertz, 1 gigahertz. Back in the 1930s and 40s, scientists exploring radiation observed its effect on many kinds of tissues. Organisms of all sorts were radiated. The country's top laboratories and best scientists hurried to expand their projects and skills. Physicians learned chemistry, biologists learned physics, chemists learned about electricity, and everyone learned about genetics. Physics had been the king of Western science, but biology was now catching up. What would this powerful new tool, radiation, bring to the world? The Manhattan Project built a large medical division, creating new institutes and research facilities all over the country. With funding from Kuhn Loeb and key philanthropists, medical research boomed. It was really radiation research, and not necessarily for the good of the public health. Many teaching hospitals and universities that still exist today are arms of the Manhattan Project, which still exists today. Splitting the atom was not the end of the road. Exploring radiation and all of its untold possibilities was and is the road. Radiation is a moving wave. Radiation is energy. Radiation, whether it's radio frequency microwave or ionizing gamma rays, is a high oscillation energy wave moving into and through living cells. It cannot be said that these high frequency energy waves do not affect our cells. When radiation enters a cell, it literally shakes, implodes, or blasts its way in, creating fragments of organic debris. With millions of cells, and you have anywhere from 50 to 75 trillion cells in your body, with millions becoming damaged, the body has a major cleanup job to do. Bits of debris can graft onto each other, attempting to rebuild and heal, often resulting in what is known as mutation. The immune system and the cells themselves are hard-pressed to keep up with the task of conducting the cleanup and preventing irregular reformations. Mutations are the result of injury, and they're also the attempts of biological forms to adjust to what is happening to them, to rework themselves, to coexist with a new situation, force, or change. Micronuclei, and you see them in this lower picture, the 3 little round circles, they are fragments of DNA that form protective membranes around themselves. And under a microscope, they look like extranuclei. Now, 24 hours of cell phone exposure, radiation from cell phones that you have just been around for 24 hours, is enough to create micronuclei in your blood cells. This has been known since 1998, when epidemiologist George Carlo, who wrote this groundbreaking book, Cell Phones, Invisible Hazards in the Wireless Age, began to gather these findings from scientists in different parts of the world. Carlo was hired by the telecom industry to investigate the health effects of using cell phones. Confident that he would give the technology a green light, his 6-year project was funded with $25 million, and the results were grim. Carlo and his teams of researchers who conducted and repeated the tests found that human blood showed genetic damage after exposure to cell phone